Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Fuse Games Conference, a completely online and free conference from the Staffordshire University's Games Department. Our next guests are Sara and Machado, Senior Talent Operations Specialist at Sumo Digital, and Ryan Miles, Digital Learning Specialist at Infinity, and collectively of Bird's Eye View, a dedicated entity dedicated to clarifying and exploring the various career pathways and progression possibilities within the game development industry. So welcome to you both.
Hello, thank you so much
Hi.
for having us.
Wonderful. So today we're going to be talking about skills and hiring. Very poignant at the minute. Shall we get going?
Let's do
Yes.
it.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Okay, so thank you very much for having us today. We're going to start by introducing ourselves, but today's talk is going to be very much around job hunting in games. So something that's very apparent, particularly with a lot of the layoffs at the moment, but we're here to help entry-level talent get into the industry. So, who are we?
A little bit about me then. So don't know if you found me or saw me on LinkedIn at any point, but I put out a lot of content to help entry-level students. And especially because myself, I came from a different industry, I came from a different country. I have multiple chronic problems. I am autistic and I also have ADHD. So pretty much like if you need someone to help kind of like looking for a job in games, having to do for themselves with quite a lot of things pulling them down. That would be me. And yes, I currently work as a senior talent acquisition partner for Sumo, and as well as Bird's Eye View. I'm the co-founder together with Ryan, where we kind of try to collate as much as we possibly can to help people get into games.
Like Sarah said, I'm Ryan, co-founder of Bird's Eye View. I have a wealth of education in background in education, experience in education, but I have a particular focus on digital learning and the career progression from university into an actual pathway in the sector.
Okay, so today we're going to be dividing the job hunt into three sections. So we're going to have looking, applying, and interviewing. So each of them kind of function separately, but do kind of add up to your final product, which is hopefully a job in games. But we're going to start talking about where to find them, how to optimize your LinkedIn so you can get found at the same time, how to create a plan for applying for jobs, cover letter advice, and portfolio as well a little bit of what to expect from your first interview, because I know sometimes it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but as a recruiter, that is my bread and butter. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of what to expect. Okay, let's start with looking. So pretty much in the games industry, there's quite a lot of places you can look at. So if your search tends to be just your normal LinkedIn and Indeed, there's a lot more that you need to approach. And here's going to be a list of the job boards that I recommend you having a look. And differently from other maybe industries, you shouldn't just pick one and go for it every day. So the way that job boards work in general is that companies will pay to have or a number of roles or like individual positions or the whole career sites into the job board. Bigger companies will use LinkedIn and sometimes have some partner job boards, but smaller companies can't really afford LinkedIn posting, which is very expensive. So they normally go to different and smaller job boards. Each of those on the screen, they have different prices, which means that by covering all of those job boards, you are hopefully getting your smaller companies, mid-level companies, and your big companies. And it's quite a lot of things for you to keep an eye on, because there's nothing worse than looking for jobs and suddenly not having anything else to apply to. So if you could kind of keep your searches automated, having your triggers, and maintaining an eye on all of those pages, you're really optimizing your chances of finding a position and applying to the position in time. Because a lot of the time, especially for junior roles, there's a lot of competition. So what you want to make sure of is that you are one of the first people to apply. And the only way to do so is jumping on job boards, keeping an eye on LinkedIn in terms of like just the networking sense of it. A lot of the times, developers from certain studios will be sharing the vacancies as a post instead of a LinkedIn job. again, because of the price of LinkedIn job posting. So just make sure to keep an eye on the companies you like, register your interests, and also just make sure to kind of connect to hiring managers or seniors within certain disciplines that you're interested in. And now this is a tricky part. So be mindful that at the end of this deck, there's a QR code with the whole presentation. So do not panic trying to write everything down. This is kind of your ebook slash guide. So when you are going to your LinkedIn and thinking, okay, today is the day I'm going to make this happen, have this by the side of you and then start writing. So I like to divide the whole LinkedIn optimizing in three sections, which is first your headline. And I normally start with the headline last because I believe that the hardest part is to summarize all you do in one or two phrases. And I think everyone that has been asked to write a bio knows how nerve-wracking that is. So you can start by the headline if you want, but I feel like sometimes starting by the experience can give you a little bit more of, oh, so now it's easier to summarize now that I thought everything through. In terms of the experience, there are a couple of things that you really, really should run from because it will curb your chances of showing up on LinkedIn searches, which is using job titles that are not standard into the games industry. Do not add growth ninjas. I do not want to see any marketing superstars. That is not such a thing. And for me as a recruiter, when I go to the background, which is the LinkedIn recruiter part of the website, you kind of pick and choose these job titles. And I try to cover my bases. I sometimes even write the job titles wrong just to make sure I'm catching those people that didn't grammar check their profiles, but I will not be adding ninja to job title. So make sure to find out what is the closest job title to what is relevant right now in the industry and go with that. Something else you should super avoid, and I've seen a lot of juniors do that because you're learning so much and you want to make sure you're covering your bases. Do not add multiple job titles into one job title. Just do not do it. Sometimes, because LinkedIn is a very temperamental website, sometimes it might be that you show up on searches for both job titles you added. Sometimes it will be that you won't show up to any of them. It really depends on how the recruiter utilizes LinkedIn Recruiter and making sure, for example, if you have like a bars in between the job titles, if you don't space it out, that is it. No keywords will pick that up. So I would recommend always having one job title for that function. If you do have to talk a bit more about other roles you had within the same company, add them individually as new roles under the same company. Do not mix your job titles. And I would definitely say that certain things you must have under your experience. And a lot of the times I'll see people just describing every single one of their responsibilities in the role. As a recruiter, most of the time I kind of know what the role entitles. So if I'm talking about a 3D artist or a marketing manager, I have a high level understanding of what that would be. So you adding your responsibilities won't increase your chances of getting my attention. But then there are a couple of things you should always have under each experience. First one is contextualizing the role. So it's very easy to say, I managed social media channels for this company. How big were the channels? Like how many followers you had in each of them? Were you the only person managing the social media, or did you have a team with you? Contextualizing your position makes it easier for me to the recruiter find out, oh, if this is a company of 40 people and this entry level candidate was managing all of those things on their own and they have here the stats to prove it, then they might not have a lot of experience professionally, but they clearly can do the job. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is paint the picture of what your day-to-day looks like. And then something I always recommend adding inside of the responsibilities is achievements in bullet points. And writing down achievements can be a bit tricky sometimes, especially when the imposter syndrome kicks in and you're like, what is an achievement? So I like to break it down in things you have improved, created, updated, solved, or delivered. So those could be projects, that could be a initiative, it could be a program, it could be, you were hired to deliver this thing because someone left halfway through. All of those things are achievements. And what tells me, the recruiter, is that not only you understand what you are doing in your current role, but you understand the impact of what you're doing onto the organization, which is essentially what most hiring managers want to know. Do you understand how things combine in terms of like the work you're putting in and how this is going to feed back to the company? That's absolutely what achievements are. And another recommendation I do is if you're going to write a bullet point achievement, try to combine qualitative and quantitative data. And by that, I like to use my own experience. But for example, I coordinated the Kickstart scheme a few years ago, which was helping young people to get their first job in games. So I would say I spearheaded the Kickstart scheme, managing to hire over 130 people on universal credit to their first game job. What am I doing with that achievement? I'm combining a big number, which normally gets people attention, with the diversity and inclusion part of my work. I wasn't just giving people jobs, I was making sure that I was giving first jobs to people that wouldn't have the chance to get them otherwise. So with one bullet point, you're just showing a very big part of like your mission, why the work you do, but also what you have achieved by doing the work you do. And that's all you kind of need an achievement. So make sure that if you can come up with 2 or 3 per experience, then that's going to set you up in a really, really good place. And then the third thing is adding visuals. A lot of people don't know, but under each of your experiences on LinkedIn, you have the possibility of adding the website, any kind of asset you've created. If you had I don't know, a deck for presentation that you've given while working there, you can add that as well. And what it does is that when you look at your LinkedIn profile, well, when I look at your LinkedIn profile, instead of being a block of text, you have a lot of very nice visuals that one will stop, make me look, and then also break it down the text. So it just makes the whole screening through a CV or portfolio more of an entertaining experience for the recruiter. So for the longer you can keep them there, more chances we will have in terms of convincing them that you're capable of doing the job. So, if you have any visuals to add, make sure to do so. Now that we've done the experience session, we go to the about. And we need to make sure to utilize the work we already done for the experience because no one has time to double the work. So your opening statement will pretty much be your baby headline. It will be a bit longer than your headline, but it's kind of what comes just before it. So what do you do and why do you do what you do in the shortest way possible? So if you are a game designer or a junior game designer, what made you go into game design in the first place? Was it a specific mechanic that really, really, made you fall in love, and every game with that mechanic, that was it for you? Was it the fact that you thought that maybe games needed a bit more accessibility? What is this thing that made you go into games other than I love games? Because that is not enough. And what do you do to kind of accomplish this thing? Like your young self wanted to do games because of this, and now you do this. So it's like a full cycle of what you're kind of like doing and why. The achievements here are exactly the achievements from your experience section. So, but you pick 3 to 5 of the best ones. So if you already wrote them down, choose the most impactful, the ones that kind of tell a good storyline about who you are and what you're doing, put them into your about section. Then the tool set. Which tools within your discipline are you comfortable using? And you can even create a second list if you want of things that I'm learning, because it's quite nice to show that, the constant development of your skill set. But the reason why this is important is that for me, the recruiter, sometimes if there's nothing on the LinkedIn profile, is not populated, I don't have access to your CV, it is a lot of time to go through like the whole recruitment process to figure it out that you don't have the skill set. So you can give yourself the best chances by literally just writing down what do you do know and how comfortable you are with those things. There's nothing wrong with saying, basic knowledge in something. It's much worse to pretend you can professionally or commercially work with a tool than to be honest and say, I'm eager to learn this tool because it's similar to this and this, which I enjoy. And yeah, I am kind of here to kind of be an open book and absorb as much as I can. And then you finalize your about section with opportunities. What type of roles would you be looking for? And I know that sometimes, especially when you're starting, you want to say any job that pays. Look at me, I'm junior, I really need this. But sometimes giving an idea for the recruiter of exactly what you'd be interested in will do much more of a favor to you. Because the first thing about looking for a job is knowing what job you want. If you want everything, then how do you convince a hiring manager that you're the right person for that job? So, for example, if you're going to 3D art, I would recommend my main tool set is this. I really enjoy doing this, but I am also open to doing prop and weapon design or whatever it is. So just give like your bread and butter and the things that you're also interested in because you're just starting in the industry. So it's actually quite nice to give the recruiter a oh, this person really does understand the cycle of the game production because they understand the niches within it and they understand how that preferred niche differs from some other niches. So you're just pretty much giving industry information back to the recruiter to confirm, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. Thank you. And after all of that, you have to make it even smaller to go into your headline. So in your headline, I really recommend finding two to five keywords that are perfectly like match with the role that you're looking next. So a little cheeky way of doing this is finding a job description for that position and just finding the keywords that they are asking for in the job description. Make sure you feel comfortable with those keywords. Don't just pick things because they make sense, but that will improve your chances of getting found in searches. And the second thing you need to do, similarly to the achievements, is illustrate your value. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you have on the value part, creating standards for entry-level roles in the games industry, because that is the value that I'm currently adding or that I want to work towards, which is we need to create some processes and standards for this, and this is what I'm doing. I know you don't have those in place, and that is the value I'm adding to you. And if possible, you can use metrics as well. So similar to the other achievement example, even if you have a big number that you can give, like, I don't know, currently a moderator for a Discord server of this many people. That is impressive. It shows a lot of transferable skills and is a very quick thing that it will be the first thing the recruiter will see when it's going through the search is your headline. So it just the idea is, working from the biggest the experience to your about section to your headline, because if you can get all the way there, you very much know what you're doing. And if you can, kind of summarize what you're doing in two phrases on your headline, then you are giving the best thing that you could possibly give to a recruiter, which is answering questions instead of giving more questions. But yes, if you kind of cover those things for your LinkedIn, they don't have to be done all at once. You are increasing your chances of getting found, and also your content being pushed harder on LinkedIn. So as you're looking, I do 100% recommend putting time into your LinkedIn, because nowadays it's kind of your digital CV in a sense, and is a little bit less annoying to work with than a CV. No one likes to do PDFs, so do enjoy LinkedIn that you can also export and become your CV. Next slide, please. Applying. So we've done all of that, right? We know where to find our jobs. We kind of listed them. We prepared our LinkedIn profile. So as soon as the hiring manager reaches our LinkedIn, they know exactly what we're about. Now we just kind of have to apply as well. So on the next slide, we're just going to talk about how to create a plan to apply for roles. A lot of the time we think that applying for roles is literally just, you go into the profile, you upload your documents. If you have time, you customize your application, and then you call it a day. I think that doing that leaves quite a lot of other things that might improve your job search on the side because you just didn't think it through. First thing I recommend is auditing your skills. So normally I recommend going to job descriptions, the same thing, what skills are they asking? Get 5 job descriptions for the same job title. What is overlapping the most? Then you list them and you be very critical of yourself. Where am I in terms of like being comfortable with those skills? What do I need to learn? What am I comfortable with? And just kind of create kind of like a development plan for yourself. Because if you have 5 minutes and you're going to read an article, you might as well read an article that's going to help you to kind of reach that skill set that they are asking for. But there's no point in just studying things if you don't know that's what the industry is asking. So do the opposite. Find a job description first, find out what they're asking, see the overlaps, and then list them down. Then you need to map the industry. And this is one of my favorite parts. So if you've never seen the UK map or the game dev map, I would recommend you doing right after this. It basically has every single studio within one the UK and the other the world. And what I like to do is separating them in 3 categories. First one, local studios. Those are the ones that you can hit the ground running. You are around them. You have the best chances because you don't request or require relocation. You would be able, or normally be able to do hybrid. And those are the ones that, because of like the kind of the time to hire and the fact that you are close by, so they can do an on-site interview with you, takes a lot of the risk of hiring juniors, as they tell us, because they know you're a real person that is gonna put the work in. So that is your first category. Those are the applications that you take the longest in order to customize, and those are the first you're gonna hit the ground running with, local companies. Then you go with companies that are remote to you, and remote companies within your time zone, because that is the part that really matters. And I would recommend remote companies within your own country, just because of tax situations and stuff is easier. Those are the category of applications that you're going to spend second most times with, because you have a lot more of them because they are remote. And then the third category, those are your dream job companies. Everyone has those. I would love to work for Maxis one day, and if they call me, I am there. However, I'm not going to spend 5 hours of my day personalizing applications for a dream company that probably gets 10 times more applications than the other ones on my list. So those are the ones when you feel inspired, you are on the flow of job hunting and applying. You're like, you know what, I'm going to do a really good application for one dream company after having done and divided your time between the other companies you have. And because you're already doing all of that, you might as well organize a job hunt. And I know this sometimes sounds a bit like job hunting in itself is already a job. Why do I need to add everything on a spreadsheet or on, Trello or Notion or whatever? Because it is a job and it's currently occupying time in your mind. Have I sent the application? Have they answered me back? What was the job title for that company? Because I've applied for over 100, and at this point, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's why you need to organize the job hunt. As simple as you can get, spreadsheet, couple of columns, name of the company, the link for the job description. If you know who's behind the person that is the hiring manager, write that down as well. Have a status, applied, not applied, preparing application, and the outcome, which is hasn't answered me back or rejected me in a week or things like that. After some time, you'll be able to look at that spreadsheet and see which kind of job titles and which type of companies you are going further with, and then you readjust your plan of job application. Okay, if I'm getting to first interviews just for this type of job, why am I wasting a lot of time on those that I'm getting instant rejected? And that's kind of, which is again another really good transferable skill for the games industry, which is data analysis. But you're using your own efforts to make sure that you're tailoring it in the best possible way, because there is no key, there is no hack, there is no cheat sheet that you can use for getting a job. You genuinely just need to find out, what's the industry asking? How are they perceiving my documents? And how do I change my documents to be closer to what the industry is asking? But you only know how to do that if you are tracking and really analyzing your efforts. So I honestly strongly recommend creating a little simple spreadsheet. If you really get into the mode of it, do a Notion, do a Trello, a board, make it very interesting and engaging so the job hunt doesn't feel as soul destroying as sometimes it can feel like. Next slide, please. Thank you. Cover letters. So, as Sumo, this week we have posted a few placements open, and I gathered a lot of the questions that people are asking about cover letters to kind of cover some information, or at least put you at ease right now. I realized that my generation was already not writing a lot of letters, to be completely honest, but we've learned how to write a letter in school. And I could be wrong, but I don't think your generation actually does that. So sometimes when you see the word letter, it sounds terrifying, but it is basically an email. A lot of the questions I received on LinkedIn were people not applying for the job because they were super scared of, who should I address the letter? I want to make sure I'm addressing the letter to the right person, which is something that, being completely honest, doesn't matter that much. Only thing you need to be mindful of, do not gender the person you're addressing. So in my case, I read so many letters with people saying, "Dear Sir," and here I am with my peach hair and my big earrings looking definitely not Sir. It won't change. I won't interview you differently. It won't change how I look at your profile. The same way that you can address the team, you can address the hiring manager, you can address the recruitment team, whoever you want. The worst thing you can do is misgendering it. So if you don't gender, you're already on the clear. And the other things you need to worry about cover letter is because it's a slightly different document from your LinkedIn. So in your LinkedIn, you're going to be very streamlined, very like metric oriented, very practical and active. This is what you do. On your cover letter is this space for you to show people why you do what you do and why you do what you do in the way you do what you do, if that makes any sense. So if you were to think about a story, because that is what cover letter is, you need to think about your beginning, your middle, and your end. And everything needs to consistently and kind of like consistently go to the same place. You can't introduce topics in the middle that you won't close back out. So be very mindful of like, okay, if I'm gonna mention my love for this mechanic because of this story, if I'm gonna mention my first work project that went well and gave me a direction of this is what I want to do for my life, and third, I want to mention where I want to go in the industry. All of those 3 points need to kind of like by the end of the cover letter tell the hiring manager, and this is why I am the perfect person for this job. I fell in love for games because of this reason. I do the things I do in this manner because I think this is important. And I see myself growing to this place. And I can do all of those things in your workplace. And this is the value that I'm adding. So, in a cover letter, you are a little bit telling your career journey, but not in your experience LinkedIn focus way. You kind of like highlight how each part of your career contributed to your point of view, your abilities, your skill set, what you think is important. As an example, as I mentioned before, I'm an autistic woman with ADHD, immigrant, and chronic pain. So, of course, when I look at recruitment, the fact that, all the audience of games is not represented within the game developers. Most of the game developers are white males, and most of the gamers are just as diverse as they can come. So that is my point of view in recruitment. I am making recruitment a bit more accessible to people like me, because when I entered, it wasn't. So that is the type of thing that I'll be putting on my cover letter. I realized in my first year in the UK that there were quite a few problems within recruitment. So since the beginning, I started writing them down and trying to think of solutions for them. Nowadays, I'm a senior. I post reports, I get data, I try to build processes. All of that is the story that I tell in my cover letter. What do I do? How do I do it? And why do I think it's important to do it that way? So don't discount any unrelated experience. Just make that make sense within the storyline you're telling. I remember this event that I went once that there was someone from the esports industry saying, "Oh, I am a chef and I've been a chef for 10 years, but I'm abandoning it all and I'm gonna be a streamer, or I want to be a coach." I think he said that he wanted to be a coach. And I said, "Why are you just gonna throw it away? All those 10 years of brilliant things that you've done to start from zero on this industry, if you can bring that to this industry." Have you ever thought about maybe nutrition for performance when you're talking about esports and gamers? They stay seated and look into a screen for like quite a few hours. What can you bring from your nutrition background and your chef background that you can add to your cover letter? And those are the little things that sometimes we don't think, but that is a lot of transferable skills and overlaps. So even if a career or any sort of job experience you had in the past doesn't make sense to where you're going, if that's all you can add in your cover letter, just make sure that you tie it nicely with the storytelling aspect to it. I've done this that led me to this. I've done this that showed me this, or I brought this with me because I realized that is a value that I add that other people might not add. Giving quantitative and qualitative data is really important in cover letters because, again, similar to the achievements, you're telling people that, this is why I'm doing this and this is my results because I'm doing this that way. So it's just, again, going back to that storytelling of like, I'm not just chasing numbers and I'm not just chasing a mission. I understand how this is a business that I'm applying to. So my mission should help them to get better numbers. And that is kind of what you're trying to do in your cover letter. It's just proving your value as always. Consistency of storyline and narration, as we already talked about it. Make sure that if you mention something, it makes sense so it comes back to the end. It's like on a TV show. If they show a gun lying on the floor and then they end the episode, you better believe that gun is going to come back to the storyline. And that is the same thing you need to be aware in your cover letter. Don't introduce an element that you're not going to pick up and kind of tie it back to what you're doing. And then transferable skills. We always say it's really, really hard to find a place to just show people I might not have a lot of experience with this, but I've done this, which is very transferable. Your cover letter is the place to do so. Don't be afraid to say, I believe this is incredibly transferable and overlaps with this within games industry. Even if you're a little bit wrong, at least it shows that you've done a little bit of research and you understand how you can't just throw everything away. So just make sure to do your research, but be your own advocate. You have the skill sets you know is important for the role. Convince them, and that's what we do in a cover letter.
So another fundamental part of applying for a job is your portfolio. Working in any creative industry, particularly in the games industry, having a portfolio of your work is completely necessary. So we've broken down it into these topics you can see on the screen here, just to have as a bit of a checklist for you to tick off to make sure that I have included those in my portfolio. So tend to start with the project overview. So give a brief summary about what it is that you were doing. What was the project about? Why were you doing it? But just try to limit it to about 100 words, no more. Otherwise, it may convolute the message, or it might distract people that are looking at your portfolio from what it is you're actually making. So, have you provided a brief summary of your project, and have you included the name of the project and any key dates? So you might want to give a timeline of how long that project took, just to show how much work you actually put into that. Then you want to think about your role and responsibilities. Were you working in a team? Have you clearly described your role in that project? Maybe you had a key part that you want to show off, but what you're displaying in your portfolio might not necessarily hone in on that. So have you explained your specific responsibilities and tasks within that project? Then you want to think about your process and approach. Have you discussed your approach and your thought process? Quite often we find in portfolios that people tend to go straight for that end product, but what we want to see is how you got there. We want to see your journey in that timeline. We want to see some of the hardships that you had to go through to get to that end point. Have you detailed any challenges you faced during that, and how did you overcome that? I think that's the most key part of that, is how did you manage to get over that challenge that you faced? Was it through your teamwork? Was it through delegating, or was it through having to do extensive research into one particular problem that you overcame? Then you want to think about your tools and technologies that you used. Have you listed those in your portfolio? So maybe you were thinking about some of the tools that you had to apply to that, or some of those mark-making techniques within your brush strokes, for instance. Have you provided any additional information about how you use these tools? Sara was previously talking about being transparent about how you're using those tools and the level that you're at. Well, maybe let's extend on that in your portfolio and say, well, maybe this is my first time doing it, but I've learned these new techniques and I've applied this to my portfolio and this body of work here. Obviously, you're going to keep in some samples of work, but as I said, try to show the process. Don't just have that end product. Show how you got there. People will be very interested in seeing that, because it tells you a lot about your personality and how you overcome certain things. So have you included the samples? It could be screenshots or videos. And have you given context to the sample of work? So explaining what they show, or how they were used. I think that's very fundamental, that you're explaining a bit more detail in there, not just showing an end result or just a snippet of something that doesn't really make sense. And then you want to think about your team collaboration. So have you mentioned any collaboration with team members on the project? Did you have to work solo, or was it something that you worked collaboratively on? People are looking for, companies are looking for people that are collaborative and know how to work within a team, particularly in the games industry. There's a pipeline of how the work starts till that finished product. And showing how you fit into that and you work with others is fundamental. And then the results and impact. So have you described any results or impact the project had? And have you included any metrics or data to back up your claims? So maybe thinking about that timeline as well, how long that took, but also thinking about for instance, how that technique was taken away from another person. So maybe going from someone who was making the concept into you making that 3D. And then you want to think about, lastly, your reflection and improvement. So have you reflected on the project and discussed what you learned? Maybe it wasn't always successful. Maybe there were some stumbling blocks that you had to overcome, and reflecting on how you overcame those or why they popped up in the first place is going to show recruiters and games companies that you know what you're talking about and you know how to navigate around them. And then you want to think about how you made any improvements, or how you would make improvements to the project if you were to redo it. This shows that you're going to apply that new set of knowledge or skills that you have there to the next project you're going to be working on. So we're going to be sending out this deck afterwards. You'll have access to this via the QR code at the end. But just having a look down each of those stages of your portfolio checklist and making sure you have each of those in there just shows that you have that complete portfolio to deliver.
Now, interviewing, which is yet again another one of my bread and butters as a recruiter, I realize that a lot of when I myself am looking for a job, I have a lot to fall back on, oh, this is how recruitment works, because I am a recruiter. But I don't think we really open that black box to people to see, what is behind, what can you expect, what the interview stages look like. So this is what we are briefly talking about now.
Sorry, jumped a bit too far.
Very good. So first things first, you just sent your application there, and someone's going to review it, right? That's all you know. It goes into like this crazy place where anything can happen. In this little crazy place, that is me. So you're going to have your talent acquisition partner having a look at all the documents that you put forward, and I will choose between doing two things. One, sending you straight directly to an interview with the hiring manager because all your documents already answered all the questions I possibly could have. Or two, book a screen call with you, which is a very casual kind of semi-interview. That is a place where I want to hear a little bit about your journey. Like I'll probably ask, tell me a bit about you. And you're going to say, well, I started playing games at this age. I found out that there could be an industry at this age. And then I started by doing this, and this. That is also the part that you bring your transferable skills. So I'm interviewing someone that it was for a dialogue position, and it was audio and dialogue and design. They pretty much said, well, I don't have a lot of experience with like putting triggers for dialogues into games, but I've created this whole theater experience that was to get up the audience, and the only way to make it work was having dialogue triggers. That is very transferable, and it might not be very commercial, but it's something that you can kind of like talk about on the interview with the recruiter, because that is something that can relate to the other person. But essentially, they're going to be asking about salary expectations, your notice period, a little bit about your current responsibilities, the tool set that you feel comfortable using. Those are the things that will happen on the screen call. If the recruiter doesn't feel like those answers were answered, well, those questions were answered with your documents. That's why, the more you add and the more you populate, much better for you, because you'll be saving some time. Then you're going to have your first interview. And that is kind of how they start counting. The first interview starts from here, not from your screen call with the recruiter. On your first interview, it might be that it's with the hiring manager directly, or a lead or senior or principal within that team. And they're going to be asking more specific questions about your process. So if you said you've done this, or on your CV there's this, they're going to be asking, what was the thought process behind this? That is why it's so important to make sure that your portfolio already is answering those questions, because that is your interview prep as well. So what was the thought process? Which tools did you use? Why did you use this tool and not that tool? And sometimes they also introduce situations to get an idea of how you'd react, or situations where you showcase certain skills. So that is definitely something you need to prep for your interview. Do I have a little story about my collaboration skills? Do I have a story to showcase how I deal with hiccups, or how do I adapt to certain situations? Just make sure you have, and they don't have to be professional. Those can be from school, those can be from family, anything, because this is about conflict resolution, which is, you don't have to have professional experience to have some experience with. Then if you move along, you're going to go to the second interview. And normally, depending for the role, if it's a very technical role, we might have a test. This could be they send you the test after the first interview, they give you an amount of time to deliver that, and they will ask you to present the test on the call, or they would ask to for you to kind of like do some bits of the project on the code if it's like a coding test as well. But a lot of the times it could be if your discipline is not something that can be made a technical thing out of it. It could be a lot more questions just in terms of how would you interact in this situation. So similarly to the first interview, if you're a producer or you are a junior producer, they might ask you things about, if you were in the situation and they cut the budget by this much and it turns out that we have some tech that we didn't account for, what is your process? They don't expect you to have a solution, they expect to hear what is your process. And that's why it's really important for you to be mindful of. If you are in a discipline that doesn't expect kind of tests, this is also a test. Explaining your process is a test, everyone. And then you go to the third interview, which tends to be with a whole team, and they go into a bit more specifics about their current workload, where they see you within this pipeline of production, and they will also ask questions about how you'll be collaborating with both sides. This is the time for the team to decide if you are a cultural add to them or if you're going to bring more attrition to that production. So you need to be very mindful that it's not because it's just a team interview that you kind of made it. You are showing to your co-workers that, hey, I'm not a difficult person to work with, and this is how a little bit of what you can expect. If you kind of cover all of those parts, you should be very comfortable to doing this, because I think the trickiest part is not knowing what to expect, but having it laid out. Okay, so the worst that can happen is a test. The best that can happen is that we just chit chat about games. Then at least you can prepare yourself for it. And then on the next slide, we're gonna talk a little bit about how to prep. We just talk about what to expect. And of course, you can expect and you should prep to talk about yourself. But if you've been doing all of the things in this deck, you feel very comfortable summarizing your experience in 2 lines. You feel very comfortable bringing 5 achievements that were very important for you because you already done all the hard work. Now it's just selling your fish, as I like to say it. So use all the information, be prepared to sell your fish, but then you have to think, the 3 other things, you need to know who you're selling your fish to. And that's why I like to bring back the job description, the company, and the product. First of all, the job description. You kind of need to match what's required to a degree, not 100%, but do you have an explanation for the things you don't match? If you don't have Unreal Engine, for example, my last company used a proprietary engine, so I don't have specific kind of experience with this. However, it is very similar to Unreal on this, and that. Those are the type of explanations you need to be prepared to give. But also, do you have a story to showcase each of the skills that are being asked on the job description? I see here that you're asking for someone that is comfortable with data analytics. In the past, I was tasked with pretty much doing a huge survey within my colleagues in the university just to find out which parts of the curriculum needed to be adapted or which parts of the curriculum were very difficult to people. And I've done this, and this using this and this software. And it might not be game related, but I feel like data analysis is a very transferable skill set. You just need to sell your fish in a sense, but be prepared to understand what they're going to be questioning your fish on. Then second thing is the company. So do you know what their values are? Doesn't matter if you believe in them or not. You kind of need to have an idea of like what do they stand by. Can you think of something on their website or social media that you can mention in an organic way? In terms of Sumo, I love how you guys put a lot of influence on your placement schemes, because I understand that how are you going to create a sustainable pipeline of developers if you're not giving a chance to entry-level candidates? That is how you showcase, I know your company, I know what you're doing, I appreciate your values. Super, super important. And the third thing is the product. What do they make? Can you mention something different and unique about what they make that makes you personally interested, or that it makes them very different on the industry? Can you how familiar you are with this type of product? And when I say this is, if they make a shooter game, how familiar you are with the shooter games currently in the market? What makes that genre or that project within this genre different from the others. And this can go from cozy games, puzzle games, simulation, just really dig deep into the genre that that company does, because that would be very, very important to you. And can you mention something interesting for you about what they make? So if I'm going to talk about Chinese Room, for example, one of our summer studios, for me, it would be the emphasis that they give in narrative and storytelling, especially in the environment, and how that sometimes even sells the game before you see any combat or gameplay. Those are the little details that you can bring that don't sound, I love your game because of this. You really need to show them that you know what you're talking about, because you've done your research. And luckily for everyone, this is pretty much the end of the presentation. I know there was a lot to digest, and that's why we are offering the deck and other resources as well at the end. We can have a QR code. But genuinely, I've used this approach to get every single one of my jobs in games. And there's no right or wrong approach, but that it has been the only one that worked for me. So I hope this can be helpful for you too.
Well, there's one last thing that we should mention. Oh, the video's not playing, unfortunately. But something that we put together as part of Bird's Eye View was the entry-level skills hub, where we crowdsourced from over 150 people working in the industry to put together a skills hub of some of the key roles in the games industry. So here on the screen, you'll see the junior level design, where we've broken down a role summary, some of the titles. You'll also find the knowledge, skills, and behavior that you'll typically apply to the role. You'll also see some of the main duties that you'd be able to, or you'll have to undertake within that role. And you'll see some examples of some portfolios and some discussions that we've had from people within the industry to really give you an inside ear to some of the roles and how they have managed to get into, or their journey into games as well. So go and head over to Entry Level Skills Hub, and you'll be able to do your a little bit more research into your particular role or your niche, or if you're still on the fence about which one you would like to potentially go into, this might give you a bit more direction. So,
and you have it. QR code, have a look, have a bit of research. If you want to connect with us on LinkedIn or send your specific questions there, I can't answer everyone, but I always write a post answering the questions. But if you have any questions right now, we are very much here for it. So
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just posting in the link for everybody into the comments. So if they want to take a look at the slide deck, then it is available there for everyone. Additionally, I will post in the link to the entry level skills hub as well. But we'll kick off the questions with one from Sunny Alf. They're asking, do you have any tips on the line between presenting your work confidently without feeling or being perceived as cocky?
yes, so that's a tricky one. And I know that Ryan will have a bit to add as well, being an educator. But at least from my side, is when you're genuinely proud of your work, instead of trying to convince someone else that your work is good, that's the line that you need to be mindful of. So if you were talking to a friend, like a really good friend, you just kind of produce this really, really sick, let's say, report, survey, Discord, whatever it is, you would be selling to your friend, but you wouldn't be scared of sounding cocky, right? Because your friend knows that you genuinely care about that. You're proud of your work. It's not about being seen a certain way. So that's the kind of thing that you need to prepare for. When you are on an interview and you're talking about what you do, as long as you come off more proud of your work than trying to sell your work, then you won't come out as cocky in a sense. And you need to be mindful as well that, that's kind of what an interview is for. You need to convince them of what you're doing. So I don't think, especially when it comes to junior level, I would say don't be scared of saying what you don't know. Oh, don't have experience with this, or from my research, so and so. The only way to sound cocky is if you sound like you know everything about games and the industry, which if we after 5 years don't know, that is no way you know. So as long as you're just talking about what you are doing and not the industry is doing or something that you're sure of, you won't come off as cocky, because we want you to be proud of your work. So just be mindful of not trying to, I don't know, appear senior, just appear passionate, and then you should be fine.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Sarah there. There is a fine line between being confident and cocky. However, if you're truly proud of what you've done, it can sometimes be perceived as cocky. But as long as you're working within the limits of your capability and not kind of maybe lying about some of the things that you've done, then I think that shows that your confidence rather than cockiness.
Lovely. So I'm going to bring the conversation back to something that you spoke about earlier on, and the initial steps of looking for roles. And you mentioned about the first people to see these roles being having an upper hand. How can you actually prepare to be one of the people that are first seeing these roles?
So what I do, and I mean, automation is my life. I love automating as much as I can. But one, if you feel a bit more technically inclined, you can create little expansions just to kind of like keep you updated when something gets updated, especially certain career pages. And I'm pretty sure nowadays with ChatGPT, you can get them to write your code for it. However, a lot of websites allow you to create alerts. So I know the Hitmarker allows you to do that. Work with indies and LinkedIn as well. So first things first, make sure that the ones that allow you to create triggers, you are putting your triggers there and you're creating a routine of checking those triggers first thing in the morning. So this might be too much information, but when I was looking for a job, I would wake up, I'll make my coffee, I'll go to the bathroom, and I'll scroll through every career page I could think of. And it just became a habit for me. So it didn't, it wasn't the soul destroying job hunting thing. It was just, oh, I'm updating my feeds. And that's kind of what you do with all the other social media feeds anyway. So the ones you can create triggers for, and the ones that, are companies in your local area or things that, if they open a job, you're going to be on the top applicants. Check them daily. Create a little checklist for yourself, which is also a great practice for your first job in games, because if that is something we all do have, is a to-do list every day that never ends. So if you create yourself little to-do lists, organic and just automated triggers, you're going to be one of the first applicants. Just be mindful of not thinking that because you're one of the first applicants, you have necessarily more chances than the others. You just have more time to sell your fish, in a sense, because at that point, the recruiter won't have 200 applications to go through. So if you keep yourself in that habit, you should be good to at least one or two of the applications you're putting through. You're going to be one of the first five.
I think just to add to that, keeping on top of it with a spreadsheet and knowing where you're applying and what you're applying for just prevents you from reapplying some of those roles that you've maybe questioned. Did I actually apply to that? And sometimes it can go back against you if you've shown that inconsistency in your portfolio, or if you've sent two applications for the same role. It's just best to just keep on top of things and know where you're at.
So I've got two questions next, one for each of you. So I'll start with one for you, Sarah, first, because it's about the recruitment side. So you talked about LinkedIn being the main profile that you're trying to set up. Is there any alternatives? Is there things that we should be looking out for? And also, with that, how can we make sure that we're putting the right time into the right ones?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it depends on your discipline. So, for example, if you are within anything marketing, PR related, you need to have a Twitter. And even though your Twitter profile won't be just like your LinkedIn profile, your bio, which is, way less characters, will have to be even more like streamlined. This is what I do, blah, 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 topics, keywords, hashtags. People still need to be able to look at your profile and see, oh, this is who I go towards. So if you look into your community management, content creation, PR systems, you need to be on top of your social media and your network building. So Slack, Discord, Twitch, make sure you know who the influencers are. But if you are within art, then of course Behance and ArtStation are places that you should be mindful of. I always recommend having a portfolio instead of your own website, having in a searchable platform. ArtStation is something that we as recruiters actually recruit using. So if you have a really well populated profile on ArtStation, that works just as much as a LinkedIn profile. And you can put actually more information in your ArtStation because you can combine with your portfolio like the processes, the improvements, and everything else. If you are within code, of course, GitHub will be very important. Any kind of place you can put repositories will be relevant. Also, finding certain communities for coders, because the higher you get up on like your leads and your principals, you have worked with a lot of other programmers throughout your career. So sometimes what happens is that those people, they have a skill set that they want. They will put the job post open, and it might be a bit too general, but they will be finding that the people that worked with them in the past to apply. So if you are in the correct discourse, you can be like, hey, haven't worked with you, but I worked with this person doing this exact same thing. I don't think it is the right way of doing recruitment, but we need to be honest, that is what some people do. So you, if you're looking for a job, you need to, use whatever tool you have to your advantage. So making sure that you are one with the industry. If that is a new topic that's coming up, it's like the layoffs. Are you reading the comments? Are you adding comments? Are you making sure who is saying what? How many companies are doing what? It's almost like it becomes your fanfic. The games industry needs to become your fanfic. You need to know each character. You need to be able to write a whole thing on it, because the more it becomes your kind of second nature, easier it is to find out who's putting the jobs out. So LinkedIn will forever be the most important one, because as recruiters, it's the easiest way for us to search, but it doesn't mean it's the only place you're going to be found on. So as long as you keep the same LinkedIn building aspect to your other website and what else you're doing, you should be okay.
Fantastic. So, Ryan, on a different part of the people management sort of cycle in the learning and development side, so you tend to focus more on when the person has been recruited and their journey afterwards and developing them. What kind of strategies do you put in place for people that are starting in new roles, particularly at the junior level, for people that are watching this stream?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding which pathway you want to take. So I tend to give new candidates or new people in the team a set of questions around why you've chosen to work here, what is the pathway you want to take, because quite often people do like to kind of jump into different roles, or say, well, I'm currently working in art, but think design might be a better suited towards my skills. And I like to give the ownership to people that are joining, because it really gives them this kind of self-motivation to go, you know what, actually, I want to go and grasp that, and help me understanding that allows me to apply some of the kind of shadowing with some of those new candidates, or it could be sending them on short courses, or just kind of allowing them some time throughout the day to then pick up a couple of hours through practicing some of those new tools that are required in that new role.
So from your experiences, what kind of typical support are there in companies for continued sort of professional development, and also is that something that tends to be ingrained in a lot of companies, or is it something that you're seeing becoming a more trendy as the time that you've spent in the industry has become?
So that is a huge problem within the games industry, is that we don't focus on a learning and development once you got the job. And that is problematic for multiple reasons. Companies are the ones that are getting actually the worst kind of like end of the stick, just because if you're not helping people to develop, they will go elsewhere to get that senior job or to learn the skill set. So I would love to say this is standard and the industry is getting much better at it, but it is not. We do have a skills crisis in games. A lot of the interpersonal skill set is also not kind of taught, which is why, if you talk with a game developer, they tend to be very good self-learners, because they know they need to put in the work, because the company might not have time, the project might be like, not time to do that, but also because companies have their own set of expectations. They have their own agenda, and your agenda is different as an employee and as someone focusing on your personal development. So one, you need to be very much on the self-learner spectrum if you want to be in games. There is no other way around it. So find something that works for you. But the second thing is that each company functions very differently. So you might be super lucky to join a company that has a discipline with a lead that is very hands-on, loves mentoring, loves to give resources to people, and then you're sorted. But you can also be in a discipline when the lead has hired their seniors, to pick up some of the responsibilities so the lead doesn't have time to mentor. And then the seniors will be giving you some tools and maybe giving you some resources, but they are not mentoring you either. They're expecting you to show up the next day with questions after having tried that thing. So I would say hopefully we are walking towards like learning and development being a bit stronger within games, but I think it's because we are all very much self-learners that the industry kind of doesn't have to, but that also puts a lot of expectations on juniors because you are the ones that have the most to pick up. So that's why utilizing your time on university is the best thing you can do. Like pick up different disciplines, create your little game jams, or bring someone from different classes just to sit down. Like, can we just discuss this topic every week? You do need to kind of get back to the whole I enjoy learning in order to work in games. And but if you're lucky enough, you will join a company that can support that. But if you're not, you still can count on yourself, which will always help with job hunting anyway. So we're not there yet, but hopefully.
So juniors looking to get roles are going to spend I guess their time with you, Sarah, and Ryan, when they get there, more so with yourself. How do they prepare themselves to be as receptive and also how to be as malleable to what you require from them? What kind of tips can you give for them to be good in the recruitment process, but also be good in the being receptive in the learning and development process as well?
Oh, this is something for life that I like to say, don't take things personally, ever, ever. You need to be so able to take feedback, you're almost craving it because whether you want it or not, you're going to receive it. And that's what we talk about, being a difficult person to work with in games. You will, it is a cycle production. So let's say you are a 3D artist, you're going to pick up certain things from your tool artists or your technical artists that will create the tools for you to do what you do. And then you're going to deliver that to animation so they can animate that scene. You need to know exactly how to pick up which quality and state to pick something from someone else and how to deliver that. Knowing that the person from this side and the person from this side will still give you feedback. And then you're going to have feedback from the person from the top, discipline specific. And then you're going to have feedback from your QA. So if you don't like feedback, then this is definitely not the industry for you. So learn how to build those, the understanding of someone giving feedback has nothing to do with your worth. It has nothing to do with like, how much you care or how much passion you have. It's generally just this physical thing in front of you. So do not take it personally and always approach everything with curiosity. So if someone gives you a feedback that you think is unfair or is very short or doesn't help you to move forward, approach it with curiosity. Go back and say, hey, I just saw your feedback. I have a couple of questions in terms of which direction you would like me to take, because it could be this, it could be that. Honestly, I just want to know what made you write that so I can be aware next time. And that's for everything in your life. If you don't approach people defensively, you approach people with curiosity, you're always going to get a positive kind of like interaction with them, because people love when you ask about things. And that's the same thing about games. One, learn how to deal with feedback because it's going to come for you. And two, learn how to be interested and curious about other people's work. It will make your own work much better in an incredibly collaborative industry as it is games, but also just makes you a better person. We all kind of want to engage and we live in a community. So yeah, feedback. And I say this especially for the technical disciplines. I don't think sometimes we put the emphasis on you are still a person working within an extremely social and collaborative industry. The time of like, coders being able to just sit down, put their headphones and not talk to anyone is over. And it actually never happened in games. You do need to be that person that is seeking feedback and being very, I don't know, just really enjoying receiving feedback as well.
I think for me, it would be adaptable and proactive, the two key words for me. Being, the industry is constantly growing and evolving and changing, and being able to adapt to some of those new tools that are coming in, or, the inclusion of AI as well is such a big part of, this last, couple of years now, and being able to adapt to, use some of those new skills to your tool, or add them to your tool set is going to be fundamental in your own growth as well. But proactive, just being, putting yourself out there, wanting to support others. You are a team at the end of the day, and showing that you're willing to support others, it will work in your benefit.
So, collectively, bird's eye view, where are we going with this? What's the next step? Big things for the future?
Definitely. So for the entry-level skills hub, we would love to cover a few more of the disciplines that we don't currently have. All the information on the hub is from, is crowdsourced data from people currently in the industry. So we'll be chasing a few more people from audio, from writing, to make sure that we get those disciplines covered. But we would also love to, and this really depends on the studios, we would love to have a little database of tests. Does a technical test look like? Can we help educators to be able to properly prepare students by giving an idea of this is what's going to be requested of you? Because it's, as Ryan can talk about, it's not quite fair to complain that education is not preparing people when industry is not preparing the educators.
But we want to become that link in the chain between education and studios. So whilst we're going to be reaching out to studios more to gain more insights, we're going to be partnering with universities to help bridge that gap between for learners going from education and not knowing where to go, and actually being able to go, well, now we've got that inside ear.
Wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to continuing to follow that journey of yours, and I think anybody that's been watching today will join me in thanking you for your time today. It's been fantastic talk and eye-opening in certain areas. I might even check out my own LinkedIn to take some of those tips on board. But yes, thank you very much for your time. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and we're going to be back again at 3 p.m. for our third industry guest talk of the day with James Smith and Liam Sinclair of Curve Digital, and we're going to be talking about everything vehicle art. So thanks very much for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. Bye.